Hi everyone, welcome once again to Code Zone KE, the only channel for you to learn how to code. So we've learned on the previous session on numerical data types, on character and string. We've talked about variables and the rules that you have to follow for you to be able to declare variables. We've talked about executable and non-executable statements. So in any case, if anything that I'm saying isn't familiar, please go back to the previous video so that you're able to understand. So today we are going to we're going to still talk about variables, but on a different platform. We want to, rather than having static variables as we have here, int length is equals to 7, you realize we want to have now an input dialog where you type in your length and width and it automatically computes the area of a rectangle. So I'm going to right click again, new, then you have Java class. This Java class I'm going to call it input dialog class. Input dialog class. So input dialog class, remember in every Java class that you have to create, you have to create a main class. Since we said this is where the compiler begins execution. All right. So if you right click on your input dialog class and run the file, then you realize it has already become executable. Reason being, you have directed the console where to begin at the main. So this one has to be declared before you do anything in any Java class. All right. So now, when you have JOptionPane, remember we said when you're using a library that is not java.lang, you have to import it. Java.lang is implicitly declared. For any class that we have used system.out.println, you realize that we haven't imported anything. But as long as we use JOptionPane, any swing application, any swing item, we are going to have to import the library for us to use it. So on this time, you're going to use JOptionPane. So we have to import the library for the JOptionPane. Now JOptionPane comes with a lot of dialogues, but this time we want to use two of them. The one is to input, the other one is to display a message. We've already done the one for displaying a message, show message dialog, but now for the input, what normally OptionPane input does, it stores anything that it receives from the input in terms of a string. So we have to create a string variable to hold everything that we receive from the input dialog of the J option. So this is how you do it. I'll declare a string and call it input num1. In input num1, I'm going to have JOptionPane. I'm going to have JOptionPane dot show input dialog. That's the only difference between for message is show message dialog, for input is show input dialog. There's no difference. We say it takes two parameters, that is null, and inside we say enter num1. This is the message that will be displayed for you to input. So these are simple as this one. You declare a string with a variable. Inside the variable, store anything that you receive from this input dialog. Now, we want to have two things. We want to find the area of a rectangle. Area of a rectangle. In this area of a rectangle, we have to declare two things. Int length, and we have int width, and we store it in an int area. Okay, so we'll have three of them. So how do we change the string? Because we cannot do multiplication. We don't have a multiplication operation on string data type. So how do we change from string to integer? Normally what we do something we call passing of a number. And how do you do that? I'll declare a number and I say int num1. Int num1, I'll do integer in full, and I is capital letter, dot parse int. Okay, then inside the parseInt, you pass the string that you're changing from the string into integer. As simple as that. Let's say, for example, let me finish up before I go to double. So we have Integer.parseInt, then you pass in the string that you're passing. So again, since I need to, I'll say this, sorry, rather than num1, allow me to use int length. So I'll use to input length. Rather than num1, I'll say input length, and this one is width. Okay, so I'll have it as input num2, and this is the same. Now the J option, the first one enters the length. Okay, we change the length into integer. The second string again enters the width. Okay, then we store it into a variable that we're calling int width, sorry, and then we're saying it is input num2. It's as simple as that. So we receive whatever we are receiving here in terms of a string, store it in a variable called input1, then change it into an integer for us to declare int area. Okay, and say int area is equals to length times width. It's as simple as that. So again, you're going to output in a JOptionPane and say JOptionPane dot show message dialog. Message dialog does not have to be passed in a string. So this is null. What you're simply saying is length. Okay, we concatenate it and say length times, I want it to be times, sorry, this is times, then say plus, we concatenate it with a width, and then say again concatenate it with an equals area. So I want it to be as simple as that. Length times width is equal, sorry, this is supposed to be concatenated, is equals to area. So let me run. If I right click on this one and run this file, simply gives you enter the length is 2, enter width 3, and it tells you 2 times 3 is equals to 6. Again, we can enter different thing. The length here is 45, the width here is 10, and you have 45 times 10 is equals to 50. So show input dialog is what is used to prompt you to enter a number. You change it into an integer with something we call passing. You pass the string into an integer, and it changes whatever it receives into an integer. Now, what if I want to find the length and the width, but this time it is in terms of a double? So what happens? So if it is a double, allow me to comment on this one. We normally say we declare a double length in terms of double and say is equals to capital D double dot parse double, and then pass again the string. In short, you're just changing whatever you have received here in input 1 into a double. Again, you do the same. I'll comment on this one and have again as double. Sorry, not as a capital D. I'll call double width. I'll say double width is equals to double dot parse double, and then you pass in the string that you have received. All right, so this input 2 is what you will receive from here. This input 1 is what you're receiving from the dialog box of the first time. Remember, we said you cannot store a double into an integer, all right? But an integer can be stored in a double. So we'll have to declare our area here as double. It's as simple as that. So if I run this one now, I can have my string, my length as 2.3. Okay, my width as 4.5, and it will tell me 2.3 times 4.5 is equals to 10.35. We can run again with different values and say what is 4.6 times 5.9, and you'll have it as 27.14. It is as simple as that. So what happens again if you run and say this is 30, the 3t, it throws an error because what you have entered here as a 3t, okay, is not a floating. It cannot format this t into what, into a double. And I'll show you how to put it inside a try and catch statement, so that you're able to catch this number format exception rather than the whole program stopping. So now I want for you to just check if it is a float. If, for example, you want to declare as a float here, you can simply now change this one to float, and rather than double, you can say float dot parse. Rather than double, now you say this is parse float. It's as simple as that. What you have done, you've changed whatever you have received here into a float. So again, I'm not a fan of float, so we're going to stick with double. So you can do as many things as you can. You can also try to do byte. You can also try to do short. You can change as many as you can, and also try to do something like summation. All right. So maybe we can actually do summation here, and we say we can output we can say double perimeter. Double perimeter is equals to 2 multiplied by length plus width. I just hope this is the area, this is the formula. And we can say, and we can simply use the JOptionPane and say show message dialog, and you can say this is null, and say, and simply talk about the perimeter of a rectangle of length. You concatenate it with the length and say and width, concatenate it again with the width, then this is width, then concatenate it say is equal to, concatenate it with the perimeter. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to comment on that. So if we run this again, so the length, if we have input length is equals to this one, input length 1, we have length, input num2, we have that one, we have area, so right click again and run, and we have enter length, we have 2.4, I enter width 5.6, and I say the perimeter of the length 2.4 and width 5.6 is equals to 16.0. So try as much. Remember, for you to be able to understand programming well, you have to keep on practicing using all these JOption input and JOption message dialog for you to be able to understand them. So you can actually do even the area of a circle. Again, input the radius, show us how you've computed the area of a circle, and also display on the message dialog. Again, once you do that, you can always paste the code at the comment section. Again, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.